liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it. This is very important. This news is just breaking. A Russian drone has entered Romanian airspace and struck an apartment building in the southeastern city of Galati. The incident occurred during an overnight Russian attack on neighboring Ukraine. Now, I would like to say, just putting all this into perspective, this could be a false flag. This could actually be an act committed by Ukraine to, in that way, get not just Romania, but the NATO alliance involved in this war against Russia, because it has been reported that Vladimir Zelensky is pleading for help from the United States because it is, or he is on the precipice of surrendering to Russia because of the onslaught they've been experiencing these last few days. However, now, whether or not that scenario comes to play or comes to be, a fact, remains to be seen. What we're looking at, or what could possibly become or come as an issue of this, is NATO's involvement in this war between Russia and Ukraine. The impact of the drone that crashed into the roof of a 10-story residential building, triggering a massive explosion and fire on the 10th floor that caused the entire explosive payload to detonate, was something that's being described by witnesses a horrific, act. The explosion did cause numerous injuries. As far as casualties, that hasn't been laid out yet. 2 people, however, did sustain minor injuries and cuts, and approximately 70 residents were safely evacuated as emergency crews extinguished the fire. In terms of the response, Romania scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets and a military helicopter to monitor the threat. Local authorities activated the roll alert system to warn border countries to take cover. The incident represents a major escalation. I repeat, that is major. It does represent a major escalation, marking the first time in the war that the Russian drone or Russian drone debris has struck a densely populated area and caused civilian injuries in Romania. Now, that being said, I would imagine, again, if Zelensky did not orchestrate this drone attack on Romania, then he has to be kind of happy sitting pretty right now, because in his mind, he has to be thinking, finally, I'm going to get some help. NATO's going to get involved because, as you all should know, Romania is a part of the NATO alliance. Now, as to whether or not the United States will get involved or have anything to say about this supposed Russian drone attack on Romania has yet to be seen. We do have a clip. I'm going to involve this clip right now just to give us a little more context and understanding in terms of this content. But again, this is something that could cause a major escalation in this war, and it almost has. It almost has the markings of the start of the Third World War. This could very much spark that. Let's hope that it doesn't. But in any event, it is war. It remains to be seen whether or not that will come to be the Third World War, or NATO getting involved, which would bring in all the Western allies that are a part of NATO against Russia. All right. And whether or not the United States will back NATO, being that United States, Donald Trump specifically, has pretty much been saying that they're going to leave NATO altogether, and NATO is of no concern to the United States. Well, let's bring this clip in and get, just the particulars in terms of what actually transpired, and, whether or not Romania thinks that Russia or that drone was fired at Romania by Russia. Okay. That being said, let's get into this. Before we do, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe to the Art of Political Discourse. Again, your participation and viewership, it means a great deal to us. So we'd like to thank everybody who has been a part of our program and the content that we give or we send out to you guys. Also, we'd like to ask to help us reach that mark, increase our subscriptions, our viewership, and shares. So ahead of time, we like to say thank you for that. All right. Now, without further ado, let's drop this clip. You got to see this. I think again that one way or another, NATO's going to get involved, and we're going to see a major escalation in this war between Russia and Ukraine and others possibly. As Russian drone strikes, Shahed strike sparks NATO-Russian escalation. War spillover hits Romania. Civilians injured tonight. NATO on hits Romania.
NATO territory has been hit, and the shockwaves are immediate. A suspected Russian one-way Shahed drone has struck a residential building in Galati, Romania, injuring civilians and igniting a geopolitical flashpoint. This is no longer confined to Ukraine. The battlefield has touched NATO soil. The core question now, how far does this escalation go?
Well, one thing for sure, will NATO get involved? Will this be the red line that they had crossed in saying that Russia crossed, or, has it been breached? And if so, how will NATO react to this violation of NATO territory? In any event, I think that Russia, had they done this, could Russia say, hey, that was an accident, or apologies, but if not, if it was done purposely, then Russia is pretty much, you would have to assume or think that Russia is pretty much prepared for whatever the consequence is. If there's going to be an escalation in this war between Russia, Ukraine, and now NATO, you would have to think that Russia, in its mind, is prepared for any escalation and or the involvement of NATO countries in that war. Again, Vladimir Zelensky has been calling out to President Trump and others to assist him because he's at the brink of surrendering to Russia because of Russia's latest onslaught, whereas they are striking Kiev now, and it doesn't seem to be any let up in that respect. This is something. This is an escalation in the worst way, because again, we already see what's happening around the world, where we have China defending Iran. Now we have Russia supposedly attacking a NATO country, United States and Iran and other Eastern countries or Arab countries involved in that war as well as Israel being involved. Then you have North Korea saying what they're going to do if such and such happens to Iran. China is also backing Iran. And as we all know, China and Russia are, they are allies. So this could be, depending on how this goes, the beginning or the start of World War III in actuality. We already know there's a lot of rhetoric back and forth in that sense. World War III has already started. But in terms of warfare, where numerous countries are involved in these wars, remains to be seen.
Romania's Ministry of Defense confirms the drone entered its airspace during a Russian strike on Ukraine, tracked until impact. 2 F-16 fighter jets were scrambled from the 86th Air Base in Shahed at 1:19 a.m., backed by an IAR-330 Sokat helicopter, with full authorization to engage. Yet, the drone struck before interception, exposing the razor-thin margin between deterrence and direct confrontation. This incident underscores a widening spillover. Ukraine's war dynamics are no longer contained. A strike linked to battlefield operations has now impacted a NATO member, raising urgent questions about escalation management and regional stability.
Well, one thing is for sure, even NATO has been involved in this war from the onstart. They not only supply Ukraine with weapons that are powerful enough to reach into Mother Russia, to reach Moscow, to be exact. Um, Putin claiming and stressing in the past that anyone who's assisting Ukraine in terms of weaponry that could reach, the motherland, Russia or Moscow, or should be considered a part of the war, and retaliation is left at Russia's discretion. So we don't know the particulars as to whether or not Romania has in recent days or weeks handed over weapons to Ukraine that very well were used to strike inside of Moscow, which did occur a week or so ago. And actually, in the last week or so, Ukraine have been firing missiles into Russia, into Moscow, to be more specifically. So, what precipitated this, what caused this, or made Russia decide to shoot into Romania is yet to be understood.
The line between conflict zone and alliance territory is blurring fast. Authorities report multiple injuries after the drone hit a residential apartment block in eastern Romania. Emergency services responded swiftly, while investigations are underway to establish the full trajectory and origin. This marks a critical moment where airspace violations translate into real-world civilian impact inside NATO borders. As NATO assesses its response, the stakes are unmistakably higher. Airspace breaches, rapid military scrambling, and now civilian injuries, each step tightening the pressure loop. With Shahed drones now linked to a strike inside Romania, the message is clear. The conflict's perimeter is expanding, and the escalation calculus is shifting.
Oh, yeah. So we'll know in the next 24 hours or so as to whether or not Romania will respond, and NATO will or would respond to this so-called or this alleged attack up on Romanian soil, or a NATO ally, by Russia. Now, again, this is an instance where this thing could actually get out of hand, and before you know it, the whole of NATO will be involved in this war between Russia and Ukraine, something which a lot of us consider or think that NATO has been itching to do. They've gotten their heart up. Donald Trump has prodded and disparaged them enough to where they say, okay, yeah, we're going to have to take matters into our own hands. So it remains to see how NATO, as well as Romania, will deal with this issue of this drone strike within its territories. Again, I think that this could very well be a false flag. It could be, to receive a Shahed drone is not necessarily difficult to do, in times of war, weapons from everywhere go some of everywhere. It's not necessarily difficult to either acquire that or replicate that model or that drone. Same thing, that Iran does. It captures, certain military assets, hardware, and they replicate it. They create it somewhat similar, somewhat, a little different, but they have the ability, the technology to do that. It should be known that Ukraine is very proficient in developing their own drones as well, and very good, very capable at creating drones that can go long distances and pack a heavy punch. To copy a Shahed drone, I don't think that's a difficult thing to do. I don't, you can imagine some drones not detonating or being shot down and being able, you can salvage these drones and put them back together and create something similar. So again, it's just a matter of time before we really understand what occurred and who is behind the occurrence. To say the least, this is something to keep our eyes on, because I think in the next 24 hours, 24 to 48 hours, we'll have a full understanding of what occurred, who is behind it, and what the response would be. This could very well mean, yeah, the start of a third world war is now in effect. And let's hope that that's not the case, because it's not going to end well for the civilians of the world more than the governments of the world who want to, wage war upon one another. All right. Now, that being said, stay tuned. We're going to do a follow-up piece on this for sure. Until then, take care of yourselves and one another.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.